I moved to a small, overcast town in northern Pennsylvania after a job transfer. The company offered a decent raise, and the promise of peace and quiet outside the city sounded like the break I needed. In that town, I found an old two-bedroom house tucked away near the woods. It needed some work, peeling paint, creaky floors. But it was in my budget, and honestly, I liked the idea of fixing something up. It had character, a past, something personal. The only thing that stood out was the basement. The door to it wasn't like a normal basement door. It was made of thick metal and had a latch like it belonged on a fallout shelter. The realtor brushed it off, saying the previous owner was just a little paranoid. The first time I opened the basement door, a wave of damp, sour air hit me. It wasn't just old mildew. There was another smell, sweet, almost metallic, like something had been rotting under concrete. I kept the door open while I explored. It was dim, dusty. Just old shelves, an overturned chair, and a mirror leaning against the far wall. But the strangest part was the hatch embedded in the floor, 3 feet wide, made of old wood, with a rusty padlock holding it shut. I assumed it led to a storm drain or crawl space. That night, around 2:45 a.m., I woke up to a soft thud. Just one. It came from below me. I told myself it was the old house settling, but deep down, I already knew that wasn't it. The sounds didn't stop. Every night, just before 3 a.m., something knocked. Once, sometimes twice, from the basement floor. Eventually, it became a pattern. Thud, pause, thud. It never escalated, just reminded me it was there. I tried ignoring it, but I was starting to lose sleep. I finally gave in and went downstairs one morning to check the hatch. It hadn't moved, but the padlock looked freshly scraped, like someone had tried to pick it. And I swear, the air felt warmer just above the hatch, like heat rising from something breathing. I moved the mirror to cover it and stacked boxes on top. The next night, I heard dragging sounds. Not furniture. Cloth on concrete. Like someone, or something, was moving just beneath the hatch. Out of paranoia, I installed a small motion camera in the basement. The next morning, I reviewed the footage. Around 2:47 a.m., the motion sensor activated. What I saw froze me. The padlock turned slightly, like it was unlocking itself. It didn't open, but the lock moved with an unnatural smoothness. No shaking, no resistance. Just one twist. Then, the mirror slowly tilted forward. No one touched it. It just leaned, then fell face first, cracking across the floor. But what terrified me wasn't the movement. It was the sound the camera picked up. Faint breathing. Not steady. Not human. It sounded like someone gasping slowly through water. I checked town records the next day. There was no listing for the last owner, no tax history, no phone number. Only a single deed filed 15 years ago, and that too was incomplete. I even asked my neighbor if they knew anything. They just said, that place should have stayed locked. 3 nights later, I heard footsteps upstairs. I live alone. I jumped out of bed, heart in my throat. I waited. Silence. Then something creaked at the end of the hall. When I looked, the basement door was open. Wide. I grabbed a flashlight and a wrench and stepped toward the stairs. The smell hit me first, stronger than ever. It wasn't mold anymore. It smelled like warm meat, like something had been underground for too long. I forced myself down. The hatch was open. No lock, no boxes, no mirror. Just an open square of darkness in the middle of the floor. It looked impossibly deep. Like light didn't want to go inside. And then I heard my own voice. Hey, I'm stuck down here. Can you help me? I froze. I hadn't said a word. It called again, exactly like me. Please, I think I'm hurt. Come down. I can't move. The voice was emotionless, too calm. Then, a second voice joined it, lower, deeper, and it whispered my full name, my childhood name, one I hadn't heard in years, not even on documents. I dropped the flashlight. It rolled to the hatch and stopped. Something rose up to the surface, not a hand, not a face, a shadow, shapeless, too tall, too thin. It didn't crawl out. It watched. I ran. I slammed the metal door shut, locked it, and shoved furniture against it. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. It doesn't knock anymore. Now, it whispers through the floor. It doesn't want to escape. It wants me to come down. When I inherited my aunt's house in rural Vermont, I didn't know what to expect. She'd passed suddenly, and I was the only family left. The house was old, tucked between woods and silence, with a red tin roof and vines curling up the sides. The inside had that antique charm. Heavy furniture, wallpapered walls, and rooms that creaked when no one moved. I wasn't planning to stay long, just clean the place up, decide whether to sell it, and get back to Boston. It was on my third night there that I noticed the strange wall in the basement. I had gone downstairs looking for cleaning supplies. The air was dense, heavy with dust and something else, like iron. The basement itself wasn't big, just cement floors, a furnace, and one wall covered in faded yellowed wallpaper that didn't match the rest of the house. It bulged slightly near the middle. Uneven. Wrong. Curious, I tugged at the edge. Behind it wasn't brick or plaster, but a second door, nailed shut, dozens of rusted nails crossing each other like stitches. There was no handle, just dark wood, splintered and cold to the touch. I felt a sudden pressure in my ears, like the air had dropped. Then a soft sound, tap, tap, from behind the door. I didn't sleep well after that. My dreams were full of peeling wallpaper and muffled breathing, of eyes watching me from cracks in the floorboards. I kept waking up drenched in sweat, heart pounding, unsure if the sounds I heard were real or imagined. The next morning, I searched the house. I wasn't sure what I was looking for. Maybe proof that the hidden door was something logical, explainable. Maybe a reason to tell myself it was just my nerves. In the attic, buried beneath quilts and photo albums, I found an old shoebox with a label in my aunt's scratchy handwriting, "Don't throw away." Inside was a small, dusty tape recorder, a few blank tapes, and a folded note. If you hear it tapping, it remembers you. Never open the door again. Seal it. Forget it. Don't listen to it. My hands shook as I slid the tape into the recorder and pressed play. At first, all I heard was my aunt's voice, weak, trembling. Not the firm woman I remembered. It mimics. That's how it gets in. It doesn't break things. It becomes them. She paused. I could hear her breathing, like she was trying not to cry. I thought it was just a shadow. Then it started sounding like my husband. He's been dead 6 years. I know that. But it sounded like him. Begging to be let out. The tape crackled. Then, silence. Followed by something that turned my blood cold. My voice. Except, I had never recorded anything. It said, "Please help me. I'm trapped. Don't leave me here." But the cadence, the pauses. It was exactly how I speak. Exactly. I rewound it twice, then dropped the recorder and backed away. Something about it didn't feel like a recording at all. That night, I heard footsteps from the basement. Not shuffling or dragging. Steady. Calm. As if someone was walking in circles, pacing behind that wall. I forced myself to go down with a flashlight. The wallpaper. Completely smooth again. No sign of the bulge. No sign of the hidden door, but when I put my ear to it, I heard scratching from behind and faint whispering. Worse, my name, repeated softly, over and over. I left my phone recording on video and propped it facing the wall before I went to bed. The next morning, I reviewed the footage. At 3:12 a.m., the camera started glitching, not sudden, more like it was resisting, flickering every few seconds. Then slowly, the wallpaper began to ripple, like someone was lightly pressing from the inside. A face-shaped bulge appeared, a mouth stretched wide, too wide, like it was smiling. Then it receded, and all was still. That same morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls from my sister in Boston. "Why did you call me last night?" she asked, panicked. "You were whispering something. You kept saying, 'Let me in. I'm cold. I don't want to be alone here.'" I hadn't called anyone. That night, I barricaded the basement door with a dresser, chair, anything I could find. But around 2:58 a.m., I heard something faint coming from the vent in the hallway. It was my voice again, but it was crying. "Claire, it hurts down here. I'm scared." It wasn't just a voice. It was full of emotion, desperation, fear. It made me hesitate. I sat there frozen until it stopped. And then I heard it scream, not just once, but like it was being torn apart. My voice, pleading, screeching, then silence. I couldn't stay still. I had to know. I raced downstairs. The basement door was wide open, even though I had pushed a dresser in front of it. The wallpaper was gone, completely stripped, and where the hidden door had been, there was now a jagged hole, like the wood had rotted from the inside and collapsed outward. On the floor lay a photo. It showed me, standing in the basement, smiling at the camera. But behind me was another version of me. Same clothes, same hair, except the mouth was warped, jaw dislocated, open wide. The eyes were pitch black, and the smile, it stretched past the ears. That was 4 days ago. Now, every time I pass a mirror, I swear it lingers a second longer. My reflection doesn't blink when I do. Sometimes it smiles when I'm not. And in the morning, I find muddy footprints. Bare, leading up from the basement. But I live alone. Whatever I sealed behind that wallpaper, it's not trapped anymore. It's wearing me, and it's learning to live. My name is Josh, and last summer, I moved into a duplex on Medford Street in a quiet Michigan suburb. The rent was cheap, too cheap, honestly, but I didn't question it. I'd just started a new job at the local newspaper, and this place had everything I needed: clean upstairs, decent neighborhood, and a spacious basement. The landlord, an older woman named Mrs. Deakins, handed me the keys with a strange warning. "Just don't go down to the lower basement. It's sealed. Previous owners left it that way for a reason." I thought she was exaggerating. The basement had a main room for laundry and storage, and behind it, a locked metal door. I knocked out of curiosity. Nothing. No sound. I let it go. For the first few nights, everything was fine, until I started hearing faint voices through the floorboards. I assumed it was the neighbors, or maybe the pipes. But one night, I heard something that stopped me mid-step. A voice whispered, "Josh, come down here." The voice wasn't loud. It was just loud enough to be undeniable. I grabbed a flashlight and went to the basement. The air grew colder the farther I descended. I stood in front of the sealed metal door and just listened. Silence. Then, scratch, 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 coming from the other side. I pressed my ear against the metal. Something was breathing on the other side. Long inhales, then sudden stops, like it was listening back. I tried the doorknob. It wouldn't budge. I noticed deep gouge marks around the frame, like someone had clawed at it from the inside. It wasn't just scratches. It was as if fingernails had splintered and bled while trying to escape. Later that night, I checked the lease again. There was a note I hadn't read closely. Tenant is not to tamper with the sub-basement. No digging, no unlocking. Violators will be evicted immediately. I felt sick reading it. That same night, I woke up gasping, not because of a dream, but because I was choking. My room was filled with the thick, coppery smell of soil. There was dirt on my floor, not in a pile, but in small footprints, leading from the hallway to the edge of my bed. They were barefoot, and I live alone. I barely slept, just stared at the ceiling until sunrise. The next day, I gave in. I couldn't stop thinking about that door. I needed answers. I went down, with a crowbar, hands shaking. I forced the metal door open. It shrieked like it hadn't moved in decades. Behind it was a narrow staircase. Wooden steps led into darkness. The walls were stone, rough and wet. The smell was stronger now, wet dirt, rust and something sweet, almost like rotting flowers. At the bottom of the stairs was a room filled with mirrors. Not hung mirrors, freestanding, dusty, antique floor-length ones. They were all angled inward, forming a perfect circle. And in the center, a pile of shoes, all worn, weathered, identical, same size, same type I was wearing, dozens of them. I don't remember walking into the mirror room. I just remember being in it, suddenly feeling cold from the inside out. The mirrors all reflected me, but something was off. They didn't blink when I did. One smiled when I didn't. Another tilted its head slowly, almost curiously. Then, in one mirror, my reflection took a step forward, even though I hadn't moved. It reached out, pressing its hand against the inside of the glass. That's when I backed up in fear, only to bump into something. Soft, damp, breathing. I spun around. Nothing was there. But the mirror behind me showed a tall, pale figure, standing inches from my back. Its arms were impossibly long, its skin grey and stretched, and it had no face, except for a wide, jagged mouth that kept opening wider and wider until it looked torn. I ran. Up the stairs 2 at a time, but each step felt heavier. The darkness behind me seemed to crawl up after me, dragging its cold breath across my neck. Just as I reached the top and turned to slam the metal door shut, all the mirrors went black. Then they screamed. All of them. A deafening chorus of distorted human-like shrieks that echoed up the stairwell and into the house. It wasn't just sound, it was pain. Pure, furious pain. The screaming stopped suddenly, but my ears rang for hours. Since then, I've sealed the metal door again with chains and nailed it shut. But I wake up every morning to a new pair of shoes by my bed, always dirty, always mine. And every few nights, I hear movement in the basement. Not the usual creaks of a settling house, but glass scraping across stone, as if the mirrors are turning, facing upward, waiting.